Hello, everyone, to another Ask Tom office hour session on JSON. And today the focus will be on one very prominent feature in the 20C free database, or the first version of 20C free, which was released 23C, which was released last week, and it's called like the developer version or the free version. And my name is Beda Hammerschmidt, and with me I have Ranjan Priyadarshi and Herman Baer, and we all work at Oracle in product development, product management, product development, and we all worked on this feature in various roles. So the big announcement that came out last week was that we released this first version of 23C, and it's like a developer version. We really want to make the Oracle database very easy to use by developers, and what we're going to talk about today is really at the center of this. And if you put your smartphone at this barcode, you will see like a blog which gives you the links where you can download and install it. So you can basically, without I don't think you even have to sign up. You can just follow these links, download this version. There's like a VM. There is like a Docker image, I believe. And maybe this is now a good time, Herman, to talk about people that are on a M1, like an Apple M1 machine. So they cannot, I tried out this virtual box route. I downloaded VirtualBox and I downloaded the VM, and that was not very successful because the VirtualBox for M1 was in like a beta version, and for some reasons we still have to use
the VirtualBox at that point in time aborts. I have not heard from anyone being able to make that happen, but we know that people were able to actually run it with Docker in conjunction with Colima, where Colima is basically creating a Docker image, emulating an Intel environment underneath the real Docker image. So people have made that happen, that they could run the 23C Docker image in conjunction with Colina.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we put out like another.
There is,
some collateral there. I tried it out yesterday with VM, didn't work. But if you have like an Intel processor, then there shouldn't be no problem to install and run it. Good. So there are some key marquee features in this release, and all of them are very interested to developers. We will not focus on all of them. I mean, that would just be way too much, and probably each of these areas deserves its own session in Ask Tom and its own show. But we're going to focus on the JSON Duality views, which is like one big feature. There is graph in the database. There is JavaScript, which you can run. You can declare data, how it's getting used. There's also JSON Schema. I think we'll also do like one of the next Ask Tom sessions just on JSON Schema. But for now, we really focus on like the JSON aspects of 23C. And I just wanted to, before we look at duality views, reiterate what you get in JSON in release 23C. And some of you may have used or looked at 21C. So things like the JSON type we added in 21C, but 21C was an innovation release. So most customers are not using 21C. So for someone who's used 19C, JSON type will be a new capability in 23C. And just to quickly iterate what it means, it's like we have a binary storage format of JSON, which is very fast for queries because we can really jump at the values of interest, so we don't have to scan through a JSON text to find what we're interested in. Instead, in this binary format, we have like offsets, which allows us to very quickly access the data of interest. And in addition to fast queries, this format is also very fast to update. So if you make a change, let's say you make a change to a large JSON document, but you only change like a small piece, let's say it's a person record, person changes the last name, then you don't have to write the entire JSON document back to disk. So instead you only write a delta. So this makes updates really super fast. And it also has like extended type support. So JSON text is like JSON as it is defined lacks some very important data types like date and timestamp, for example, or some numeric types. And those are also supported in our binary JSON data type. And the support is not only inside the database, but if you come with like a newer version of Java JDBC or the latest Python thin driver, then this has support for this binary JSON data type. Another thing we added in 21C, but also enhanced in 23C, is the multi-value index. So very often you have repeating elements in your JSON data. The example here is that a person has multiple addresses and you may want to index based on the zip. So a regular functional index, like in 19C, for example, would be limited to single values per document. So you would, if you had repeating values, you could use the JSON search index or materialized views. There were a couple of workarounds that were possible, but now with like 23C and multi-value index, you can actually do indexes inside JSON arrays, and those are it's even possible to do these as a composite index. So you can say you want an index, let's say on zip, which is inside the array, but also let's say name or job. And this is a powerful feature that makes indexing even easier. A new thing now in 23C is JSON Schema support. This is the first time we support it. And I mentioned that it probably deserves its own AskTom session because it's really quite powerful what we do there. But just very briefly, what do? We allow to validate JSON data. If you make an insert or an update and you say, well, my customer better have a field customer ID, and it's like a positive number or whatever, then you can define a JSON schema that defines the shape, the data types, the structure of your JSON data, and it's an option to the isJSON check constraint. And if the data you're trying to insert or update is not compliant to the schema, this operation will be rejected. So that's a very short version of what we do. Then there is another use case of JSON schema, and that is to describe a database object. So this is the example I put here on the slide. So let's say you have a table emp, like this is the Scott Tiger employee table. There is nothing JSON inside, it's plain relational. And you can invoke a PL SQL function, dbms JSON schema describe, and it will actually give you a JSON schema description of what this database object is. So it would say, well, its name is emp, and it's actually a table, and the table has columns emp no ename, and these are the data types. For example, for ename, it's either a string or null. So in this table, it's the column allows null values, so you can immediately see this from the JSON schema. And actually, if you would generate or if you would convert a relational row to JSON using our JSON constructor, so this is the short version of JSON object, then you could use this schema to validate, or this schema could be used to also validate the JSON version of that row. So that might be handy if you do some client-side validations before you send the data back to the database, for example. So this is JSON schema. Another thing, JSON transform, that's also was initially in 21C. We backported it to 19C, but we greatly enhanced it in 23C. So this is an example where I show what enhancements are possible. Let's say you have a purchase order. So one of my favorite cartoon figures is Tintin or Tintin, and he decides to buy a pet door for his dog Snowy. And in order to get him used to this door, he also buys some treats for him. And we just want to know, like, what is the total value of this order? So what is the price per line item if we multiply it with a quantity, and then we just sum it up. And this is now very easy. We allow like this nested path syntax where I can iterate over each line item. So this sets the context to each of these objects. We have two objects here in the line item, and then I can just calculate a new field called price. And it's the multiplication of the quantity and the unit price. So 1 times 79 is 79, but 5 times 199 is 995. And then I can also set like a global field, order total, where I just sum up these prices in this JSON array. So this is just one example. There's a lot more you can do. There's variable support. There's even kind of if-then or case blocks. So JSON transform will be hugely more powerful in 23C. And with this, any questions so far? Oh, by the way, if there are any questions, please put them in the Q&A. And Herman and Ranjan will interrupt me if there's any questions. But how do we look so far? Any questions there? I see something's in the chat.
All taken care of so far.
Yeah, so far so good.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, then let's go to JSON Relational Duality. That is one of the big capabilities. We prepared a demo for this, but maybe as a little introduction, like on the concepts. So the idea is that you store data in a relational manner, I would say. So you can still, you would basically normalize data. You can store entities separately. The thing with JSON is like a tree model or a hierarchy. And when you have different entities, so in my example, I will use a school. School consists of like students and teachers and classes, etc. And those are just like very different things. And if you had to put those into a hierarchy, if you say, well, I put the teachers under the classes and the students as well, then whatever hierarchical format you use, it will not be suitable for all your use cases because it's basically a network model or a graph. There is no clear hierarchy in that sense. So what this JSON document relational duality allows you is to basically store your entities separately in a relational format, and then define one or multiple JSON views over this data. So you can see the same content as JSON. So you can pick columns from these tables and choose different hierarchies. So you could say I have one hierarchy where I have the students under the courses, and maybe I have another one where the courses is in a different order. And you can make updates to both these formats. Like you can update your relational model, or you can update your JSON model. We're going to see that in a demo. This is an example how you use duality. So the way you use duality is you create a view. So this is a student schedule view. It's defined over a student table. And then this is actually a GraphQL syntax. So we would also support the SQL JSON syntax. So some of you may be familiar with generating JSON from relational data using like JSON object, JSON array ag. And this is all possible still, but here you see a GraphQL version. Maybe I explain that more in the demo, but the nice part really is that this GraphQL syntax follows really the structure of the JSON you want to generate. So in your GraphQL, you can really, or let's put it differently. If you want, let's say, a student schedule in a certain format, like where you want to have like the name of the student and then an array with all the courses that the student takes, that structure is mirrored in the GraphQL syntax here. Exactly. So you see the tables, how they're being used and how they participate. And now let's look at a live demo here. That's always more fun. Anything in the chat? So any questions? I see Ajit has joined. Ajit, feel free to weigh in at any time.
Yeah, sure, Viren. Thanks.
And if there are any questions, and so
Ranjan just started to type an answer to the question. But
okay.
Yeah, so we can come back to the question later. I think you continue with the demo, and then I think the question is around how to best position relational duality view. But I think we should see the demo.
Yeah, let's wait a little bit. Like the demo does not.
The demo will explain some of the things and make it totally clear of where to put it out.
Yeah, I just want to like really now demo this school example. So we start with a table student. And basically, it's very simple. It has like an ID, a name, and then the student picks a major of what they study. And we see two students here, student A, computer science, student B, biology. And we're going to rename these students to real name in a second. And what I can then do, like just like the simplest example is I have one table. I create a duality view on top of that. And you see here, I am not using this GraphQL syntax. I use like a simple JSON. This is the simplified syntax of JSON object. So this is just generating a JSON object where I have the ID, the name, and the major that they're studying. And then I say here, this basically looks like a plain view. Like, why do I put JSON Duality view? Well, there is some additional capabilities that this view has, and this is what you see here. This is where I give it some, I allow it to be updated and inserted and deleted. So by default, such a view would be read-only, but here I want to really make changes through this view. So I provide this. And you see like this red dot here. This just means that the parser here in SQL Developed Web doesn't yet understand the syntax. So this is just fresh from the printing press, but it still works. I can just click here on Run Script, and we should see that the duality view got created. And now if I select from this view, I will see that our two students, student A and B, are basically here as JSON representations. Now there is this ID that we use to identify it, like every document here. This is like one document. Every document is identified by an ID. And this maps to the one or multiple primary key columns of the table, of the underlying table. So in our example, we only had one PK column. So this is what this underscore ID will map to. This was the student ID, if you remember when I created it. And now there are these injected fields here in underscore metadata. So this is what I did not specify. Let me actually put this duality view on top again. I already ran it, but maybe that's a bit easier. So this was the view definition, and you see I specified a field name underscore ID and mapped it to the student ID. So we see this here, name and major, you see it here, and then there is this metadata. So this is basically added when we query this data, and the etag can be used for optimistic locking. So this represents the current state of the object, and if I have concurrent updates or inserts, I'm not overriding changes that just happen in the backend. I will also demonstrate this. The asof is kind of a timestamp. So this is the SCN. So I could pick this value and issue further queries as of this point in time. So this could also be used for time-consistent read. Good. So now let's create a simple update through SQL. Student A is not a very cool name, so let's rename this person to Herman. And obviously, if I mean, this is trivial now. If I query either as a JSON or like this here, I'm just querying the underlying table that I just updated. No surprise, the new name is there. And obviously here, it's also inside the JSON. And actually the etag would have changed because the state of the object has changed. So the etag would have also changed. Good. So now let's do an update. I am updating student 2. And I'm doing the update now not through directly to the underlying table, but I'm updating the view. So this is now an update on the student view. And I want to update student number 2. So let's look at what the current etag is. This looks current E86, so this should work. And I'm changing student B to Bodo. Let's run this. And it got updated. Oh, but my name is not Bodo. My name is actually Beta. So let's just replace this here. And now what happens? Well, I cannot update it. So why is that? Why can't I just use the same query multiple times and change Bodo to Beta? And the reason is, you may have guessed it, that I still used like the old etag. So imagine that the two updates that I sent, the first one with Bodo and the second one with Beta, came from two different clients. Then basically the second update would overwrite the first update. And this is what we want to avoid. And you can avoid it by two different means. One is with locking. So I could have done like a select for update. This would also work. But really, if you have an application with many clients, maybe REST clients with a stateless, like locking is not a good strategy. Like someone may come, lock the document, never come back, and then you can never change the document again. And instead, there's like this optimistic locking strategy where you have these etag values. And now if you want to make an update, you send the etag back that you received, and the database will just make sure that the etag is the same. And if a change has occurred, it's just telling you, well, bad luck, you were not looking at the latest data, so I will not take what you gave me and just blindly overwrite it. But there is a way I could force this, or I could basically say I don't want to do any etag validation, and this is by just renaming it. So if I send the same update back now the second time without the etag, there was no etag to be checked, and now no optimistic locking, basically like any regular update statement, it will do it. And now we have two students, Herman and Beta, and this shows so far. So let's summarize so far what we have seen. We've seen that this optimistic locking strategy based on the etag really makes it easy to work with high concurrency because you're not overriding any changes. So this is really, and it scales is very nice if you have like hundreds or thousands of clients. If you build like a REST application and you honor the etag, it's very safe to rely on this.
Yeah. So Beta, you might want to quickly comment on when you did that, right? We saw the students basically as two documents, and there's a question on chat why we show that as two documents and not as a JSON array.
Oh, because in my view, let's look at the view definition. I basically said this was the view definition. I basically said it's a query over the student table. So every row is one student record, and each row gets converted to one JSON object. And that's also how you would, I guess this is how you would really interpret the data, because in your relational model, the row represents one instance of your entity, so to say. Like every row is one student. And you would want to have, in most cases, you would want to have one student as one JSON document. Now, you could obviously say, I want to have an array of students. We're going to see that in a second where we embed arrays. Maybe it's getting clearer then. Instead of me like explaining a lot of things, let's just continue. Maybe that gets clearer, I hope. So we do the same for teacher, like a school. If you just have students, no good things happen. So you need some teachers that pay attention to students behaving well. So this is our teacher, just the name, and teachers are getting paid to look after the kids. So they have like a salary. And I'm also just inserting two teachers, teacher A, teacher B. And no surprise on the view, it's the same as the student view. I'm also creating a view just on teachers, which allows me to make any updates. So I don't demonstrate anything really here because it's exactly like the student stuff. Now we need the teachers want to teach something, the students want to learn. So we create some classes here. And the class has a name and a room, and then here it refers to a teacher. So here we have like a foreign key teacher ID, which references our teacher table. So here the assumption is that every course is taught by one teacher, and we insert 3 courses: algorithms, data structures, and self physiology. Couldn't come up with anything better for our biology major. And now we have classes or courses, teachers, students. So what is missing? Well, the schedule. So a student attends a course. So this is what the schedule does. So it's basically it's kind of a mapping table just. So we have the student ID, which refers to student table, and the course ID or the class ID, which refers classes. And it just does it's an end-to-end relationship between class and student. And here you see which student attends which course. So obviously you don't see it because these are just the IDs. And but in the JSON version, this will be a lot easier. And now let's get to the most interesting part of this demo, I guess, which is to create a view over this, which gives us the information of a student course as JSON. So here I create one view. It's the student schedule view. So the motivation is we have, I don't know, like a web page where a student can assign themselves to a course which they want to attend. And it's basically here over the student table. And from the student table, I pick like the student ID, the student name. And then I have an embedded object classes. And here and this classes is from the schedule table. So here I refer to the schedule table. And here I want to allow updates, inserts, and deletes. So I want to allow students through this view to add or remove courses to their schedule. And then I have some information that I derive from the class, like the name and the room. And I also, from the class, I can also go to the teacher to get the teacher name. And you see this unnest annotation. This basically means, although this is kind of nested or embedded within another object, I want to merge it with the parent object. I basically want to move all these fields alongside the fields of the parent object. So let's run this.
Hey, Beda, can you maybe emphasize the simplicity of the syntax, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. So compared to the longer syntax, which would use JSON objects, so you see here that all you have to do is you name the tables that you want to use. You don't see like a where clause where you do like the parent key, the PK, FK relationship. So this is what we're going to figure out automatically. Like if you have like your student and classes, there are primary key, foreign keys defined. You don't have to like specify those. That's kind of done under the cover for you. Other simplicity is obviously that's a lot shorter, a lot more readable. What else, Ranjan?
Yeah, I mean, of course, if somebody is used to the SQL syntax, I mean, they can build duality views using the SQL syntax. We are providing the GraphQL syntax here. I mean, this is the way you would imagine your kind of structure of the JSON or JSON view to be, right? Yeah, I mean, if you prefer to use SQL syntax, feel free to use the SQL syntax. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things, depending on where you come from. If you're like, if you've used GraphQL or a lot of JSON, this may look like very natural, but for someone who's very SQL centric, they may prefer just to have like select JSON object from where, etc. Both are possible. Actually, this is just a simplified syntax. Like under the cover, this will use JSON object, JSON array ag, etc. So, so we get this.
Emphasize that insert, update, delete, which is there. Why we have that syntax?
Yeah, you want to explain that, or Ranjan?
This is to kind of any duality views, right? It could be used for maybe what sort of DML operations can be allowed on the duality views. You can restrict using that particular syntax. So you can specify, hey, this duality views can only be inserted, or the updates and deletes can be allowed. So you can actually kind of manage the whole operation and control on the duality views using that particular syntax.
Yeah. And also have I will actually show this, Ranjan, where I'm trying to. Yeah. Good. So let's just query from this view. And so what we see here is we have our student, Herman, and he attends algorithms in room 1 with teacher A, and data structures in room 2, also taught by teacher A, and Beta is attending cell physiology, taught by teacher B. So all that information is here in this object. And now let's work with this view. But what I do before is I could now work with this view directly using SQL. So I could continue copying SQL statements into this field here, but I want to do a bit more. And for that, I enable these views as collections. So you may be familiar that Oracle has the concept of a collection where you, instead of treating your data as, let's say, or the mental model is not you have rows in a table, but with collections, the mental model is you have JSON documents which are inside a collection. And you may be familiar with this because we have this capabilities for many years. We use it, for example, for Mongo API compatibility. We have this SODA API, Simple Oracle Document Access API. And you see here that we also use SODA to create a duality view collection over these views. So I'm basically saying I want to have like a collection called student schedule, and it maps to this view. So maybe it gets a bit clearer in a second if I pull up a Mongo shell. So let me just connect to Mongo shell, and now I do show collections, and I now see these views also as a collection. So what I could do, I could say, give me all the content of teachers. So DB teacher, this is the collection name, and find without a filter expression returns me everything. So I see all the, or actually, let's say, why don't we go, what was the other one called? Student schedule. Student schedule. We basically see the same result that we saw here in this SQL Developer Web. We see it also here in the Mongo shell. So the tool I'm using here is not an Oracle tool. This is like from MongoDB. MongoDB is very popular among developers. They like working with JSON documents because their application, like maybe a little background is that if you write an application, you may think, oh, I have an application object, like a schedule, a purchase order, a student, whatever. And instead of having to normalize this to multiple tables, deal with joins on queries and multiple inserts or updates during, if your application object change, they just say, oh, I want to map my Java class or whatever programming language I use. I want to map it to a JSON because that's super easy. And I'm just doing like a simple put and a get, and I have the entirety of the data I need. And now if you think about building an application which allows people to change their schedule, then you see, well, all the information I need is really here. I know the student, I know which courses they take, and I also know all the information about the course. And I don't have to like pull like the teacher name from like a teacher table and the room from another table. It's all inside one object. And this is what we give here. Like we map this to a collection, which is MongoDB compatible. And I can use my MongoDB tool and just access it. And I could also use another tool, MongoDB Compass. This is like a more visual tool. Let me just reload the data. And then here under duality, we see the teacher collection. And I see the stuff. And actually, let's make an update here. Teacher A sounds not very cool. Let's make it like Ranjan. And I make an update. And you see the data got updated. And I guess if I go here and just do a select name from teacher, then we see teacher A is now called Ranjan. So this also works. Now I could go to if we look back here, I did like a teacher find, and let's say I looked at this teacher A. So now I'm doing like a concurrent, I'm explaining again like a concurrent situation. And let's say I was looking at this teacher and I thought, well, teacher A really does a good job. So I want to give this guy a pay raise. I want to increase this person's salary. I want to make it a 200. So see again, like this etag here, it's the ends with 3 C's. So basically I'm now simulating like a concurrent access, and I'm basically saying, well, teacher A used to have a salary of 100. I make it now a salary of 200, and I make this update. And this update now did not go through. You see basically here an error. It's actually, it's this, I always like this, like it's a Mongo server error, and then it says Aura whatever. So this is like an Oracle database error funneled to MongoDB here, and it says cannot update the duality view because the etag didn't match. So again, even here we show that concurrent updates are optimistically logged. So I could either now do this without what I've shown before. I would just remove the etag entirety and kind of force it through, or I could say, well, let me. This is what you probably would do more. You would basically say, I want to find the current etag. So you see here, there is like Ranjan, salary 100. So if I instead replace this with this, just give me a second to copy this. Name Ranjan. Just let's see, do I need another closing tag here? I might. No, I don't know. Let's see. Just editing this on the second screen here, unexpected token. I think I needed another closing parentheses. Ranjan, you're not getting your raise here.
That's wonderful.
Well,
let me fix this example here, and you can maybe there are some questions. Because I really want to give you.
Teacher, Ranjan, I'm the student. I'm going to see you in class.
Okay, I think let's see how this goes. I've edited here, doing the replace one. Okay, now it seems to work. Ranjan 200 etag, it says in acknowledge true. Let's do like a select star from teacher. Okay, Ranjan, you got your raise.
Wonderful.
Okay, so now let's do let's look at the student schedule. So I'm now accessing another collection. So we were playing around with this teacher collection here, but now let's look at a different collection, the student schedule. And now what you see here is that although this is like a totally different document from a different collection, the update I made to the teacher collection is now reflected in the student schedule collection. Like this is a major difference to pure document databases where documents are really separate JSON. And if you make a change to one JSON document, it has nothing to do with any other one. There is no sharing or whatsoever happening. Here it's really that this document is made up of different entities, the student, the class, and the teacher, and they are being shared. Like this is very important to understand. Like this is like a fundamental difference and like a major improvement over pure document databases, that you can share this data. So we renamed teacher 1 to Ranjan in one collection, and now immediately any other collection that shares the same entity sees this change. So how could you do that without duality views? There's basically two ways how you had to code around this. One is where if you change a field in one document, you have to like manually change it in any other document in order to keep it consistent. So this would be hard from a coding point of view. And it could very easily lead to inconsistency besides all the performance problems that such a solution had. So basically nobody does that. So what people instead do is they just have even IDs in their JSON. And now the application has to say, well, I actually want to show who the teacher is. I want to show Ranjan in my UI, but because I cannot share the name, I have to work with IDs inside my JSON. It's almost like using foreign keys inside your JSON themselves. And then it's kind of questionable, like, hi, why did you even go like this JSON route in the first place? Because you still have to live with IDs, and your application has to go back and fetch these IDs, which is also more round trips, more things to code. Whereas here, all the information I need for this entity is embedded inside this object, or the values are embedded. And I could pick what I wanted, right? So here in this student schedule view, I'm not showing the salary, for example, right? It's not that's not information that's needed here, so the view does not have it. This is really cool. Like this is like a major capability that duality views have. Good. So now we're almost done here. One last part. So let's go to, we also have this, I just want to show that this is possible. We have like this JSON page here. So I'm not forced to using like MongoDB tools like Compass. I can also use our JSON page, and you see there's the student schedule. And now I have this document, and I see this, and I want to make an update here. So Beta really likes Ranjan, so he says, well, let me make an update here. So I want to hear cell physiology. Next time I pick another, can pronounce this. And I'm saying, well, I really want Ranjan here. I don't like teacher B. Teacher B is so hard. I want Ranjan to teach cell this thing, basically. And I save this, and I get an error. Cannot update the field, because in our view definition, we basically said inside the view, you cannot make changes to these to this entity here. Like I cannot pick, like a student who uses an app, they cannot pick their favorite room or time or teacher. This is just disallowed. It's again a major difference to pure document databases, where if you can write a JSON, you can make changes anywhere in the document. But here, this kind is disallowed. Like Beta cannot choose Ranjan. But what is allowed? So what I can do, for example, is I can pick a course. So we could say Herman does not want to take the data structures anymore. So I'm removing a course. And you see Herman used to have 2 courses. Now there is 1 course. And I could basically say, well, I want to listen to data structures. So I make an update here. And now that's a change that is allowed. So I can add myself to courses. I can remove myself from courses, but I cannot pick the teacher. And again, that's a major improvement or major capabilities that pure document databases do not have. And with this, that was the demo. I hope this really showed what we can do with duality views.
Beta, if I might add something.
Yeah, sure.
So what Beta just showed us right now is that you almost get like this field level locking capability or field level, updatability capability using duality view. So you can specify through the student's duality view that the courses that you take are updatable, but you cannot update the teacher's attributes. Now, on exactly the same set of tables, you can specify another view, the teacher's view, right? Mm-hmm. And through the teacher's view, you can specify a different set of updatability attributes. So the teacher will be able to modify the class, the room in which the class is conducted. But on the same data, the students will not be able to modify the room in which the class is conducted, obviously. So it's a very flexible model. And you can choose the updatability attributes on the same underlying set of tables based on your annotations on these separate duality views.
Yeah, excellent point. I just made it as you spoke. So teacher 2 is now Ajit. You may have to renegotiate your salary though. And if I refresh the student schedule, you see Ajit is there. This is really cool. I mean, this is really allows to have like for every, think of, you have an application that accesses data differently. Maybe think of like pages. Here is where I make updates to the student. Here I give teachers like a salary hike. This is the student schedule. This is like where the rooms, how the rooms are being used, etc. So on. And you can, with duality views, you can keep sharing the same entities, pick what you need, put it in the hierarchy or the JSON shape you want, and work with it. Yeah, this is kind of the summary. It's like really simple for developers to work with. You have your database. You can, if you want this document route, you can just get a document, make the changes you want, put it back. So we've shown like Mongo API, and I could have shown SQL as REST as well. So you can do the same with REST. Maybe we do that in like a follow-up demo. But you can also continue to work with SQL. So one way to look at it is, let's say you have an application that was written 20 years ago. Everything is like relational. You can put JSON duality views on top and REST enable this. And now you have like very quickly modernized your app, exposed different entities to REST, and you can make modification reads and writes through REST as well. And we make sure that there are no inconsistencies, because you can share the same data in different JSON documents. And if you make a change in one, it's basically the change is reflected immediately. Yeah, so this is like really a paradigm shift. So in the past, you used to have like a relational database or like this table model and the document model. So Oracle supported both for a long time. So we were able to store JSON collections, we were able to store JSON types or JSON data in a table, map this to a collection. You could even like mix and match both. You could have like a table with like some relational columns and some JSON columns. But this is really the next level. Like this is why we call it duality. Your data is both JSON and relational. Like what is light? Light is like wave and particle, and your data can be relational as well as JSON. This is where the name comes from. Yeah, we presented this to like a couple industry analysts, and we got extremely positive feedback. So people see this as one of the most important innovations in information science. And even like Redmonk, which is very much an analyst company for developers, or who emphasize developer, it's very high, and even they kind of acknowledge that duality views, and especially this 23C developer release, is like is really cool, and for Oracle. Yeah, give it a try. So now let's open Q&A.
Hey, Beda, we should probably clarify this positioning statement about who is this targeted to? Is this the SQL developer, or is this the document developers or document application developers?
You mean duality views?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is really mostly for application developers. So we want people to use this to write new applications. And many people realize that JSON increases productivity. You have these simple APIs, you have this abstraction of your application data being like a JSON document in the database, but storing data as JSON works fine in many cases, but if your application grows more and more complex, it's really hard to find the one JSON hierarchy that is good for all your use cases. So think of really this school example. Everyone understands how a school works, but it's really like a network, right? So one teacher has multiple students, the same student has multiple teachers, they have all many courses. So it's not really a hierarchical structure or model. And you can very easily model it as relational stuff. And then with these multiple duality views, you really get the simplicity of documents without having to give up consistency, or you don't have to like duplicate your data or code around like maintaining things consistently, or looking up embedded IDs, etc. So I think it's a further simplification. So you really kind of get a document store plus with duality views.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, really it's targeted to both, whether you are a SQL application developer or a current document application developer. It makes life of both kind of class of people simpler. You can read about there are 2 blogs out there which talks in details about the benefits of JSON Relational Duality. I mean, many of these applications which are being built in the SQL world, they try to use the ORMs and the mappers, the object relational mappers, but ORMs starts to have like round trips between application and the data. Along with that, I mean, all these updates and any of these updates, deletes, and other things, I mean, all of this requires round trips in order to even update and maintain those data, right? So now with these duality views, actually you can make those updates and any of these operations much simpler, right? You can update several of these tables, underlying tables, in one shot rather than doing round trips. So that's kind of benefit to the SQL developer. And to the document developers, as Beda talked about, is that I mean, there are a lot of inherent issues when somebody uses document databases, whether it's a data inconsistency problems, and the flexibility and simplicity that is needed with document databases, right? So all of this, please do read those blogs. It goes in details about the benefits and why you can use and how you can use duality views.
Yeah. Maybe, Ranjan, let's also briefly mention ORM tools like Hibernate, etc. So a developer may say, "Hey, I'm just writing my my Java code, and like some frameworks takes care of the database access." And what we observed is that there's actually or what's happening by default is that many of these frameworks do lazy load. So think about, you have like a purchase order, and the purchase order has like 10 line items. And what your ORM will do by default is, if you open this purchase order, is it will first load from one table, and it sees, oh, there's like 10 line items. And then it will go 10 times to fetch the actual line item. So it will issue 11 queries. It's called like the N+1 problem. So this is what very often these mapping tools will define. Whereas with a duality view, although the data could be stored exactly the same way in the tables, like the table outline could be exactly the same, but with a duality view, you could have like one round trip to the database. So this would also yield you much better performance, and also like a consistent point in time read, because if your application or if your framework does this 11 reads, who's guaranteeing that there are no updates in between? So maybe you are reading and you say, oh, I got 10 line items, but then you only get 9 or 11, and then you have to code around that. So yeah, so even for people who use ORMs right now, this might be like a very, very interesting product or feature here for simplicity, but even performance.
Yeah.
Hey, one thing I wanted to mention, but I think you already mentioned this. If you go back to the GraphQL syntax for declaring the view,
yeah,
then you can see something very interesting in that syntax.
Yep.
If you go to the
I got it, almost there.
Okay, yeah, here we go. Right. So here there is a many-to-many, and this is where the duality view concept really excels in modeling your data, is that the relationship between courses and students is a many-to-many relationship. So one student can obviously take many courses, and many students can be enrolled in the same course, right? And this kind of relationship is very difficult to model, or you have to rather have two separate collections and keep them consistent when you're trying to model this in a purely document database. And here that's not the case. Here you update any one single field, and all your data is automatically
exactly. And obviously, because these are like real foreign key, primary key constraints, the consistency is really guaranteed and is enforced by the database. If you try to do, I was just thinking, Ajit, how you would model end-to-end relationship in JSON, and what people do is they have arrays embedded inside their JSON on two sides of it. So you would have, let's say, a student collection where the student has an array of IDs for the course. And those are kind of foreign keys, but there is nothing really enforcing it. So you could delete a course where students are still pointing to it, etc.
Right.
And those problems couldn't arise here, because it's still kind of mature, well understood relational capabilities that underlies these duality views.
Yeah, fundamentally, if we zoom out and then see that the relational model is very nice for succinctness of representation and normalization, right? All the data is consistent, but at the same time, it's not very convenient from an app standpoint, because people look at the world in terms of entities, not in terms of rows and columns. So we basically married the two concepts at a very high level.
Hey, but I just wanted to also talk about that the live labs for
that's a good, please.
Is coming very soon. It could be this week itself, so that will make it even easier that you don't have to install anything. Just go to the link for the live labs, and you could run the whole tutorial yourself.
Where would people find the link to the live lab? Is
I will post it.
okay.
Yeah, which maybe once you have this session completed, and if you want to send the recording, maybe we can add, if the live links are already available, we can send the link.
Yeah, we will upload this video to YouTube and we can put the link underneath. Absolutely.
You also, Ranjan, do you also want to point people to your GitHub? Because there's examples out there already, which might not be the teacher example that Beta showed, but we have other duality view examples out there already in the GitHub repo.
Yeah, definitely. So I put all the links in the chat and Q&A, both chat and Q&A. So there on the GitHub, we have examples using duality view with SQL, with REST, with MongoDB APIs and all. They're very easy to use examples, very well documented, and step-by-step kind of advancing to various features and capabilities of duality views. Please do try those. It's very, very easy to use.
Where could people give feedback, Ranjan? I think we have like a forum where people could say, hey, this should work differently, or have you thought about this, or I found a bug, like.
Right. So yeah, I pasted all the links together. So the last link is the link to the forum. And you could actually ask any question related to Oracle Database 23c3 in that forum. And we look forward to any of the feedbacks, enhancements, issues, whatnot, right? The whole reason for kind of releasing this developer release, coming out with this developer release was to get this software in the hands of all these developers sooner so that they can try it out and give us feedback.
Cool. Did we answer all the questions in the Q&A?
I think there is one question about how somebody can get access to the demo scripts and all.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. How could we do that, Ranjan? Could
we just put it in the GitHub?
Yeah, we could.
If you show me, if you can do that.
So they want access to the slides and the demo scripts.
Yeah, we'll figure something out where we can put that, or you could just email one of us and we send it to you now. That's also fine.
Yeah, so most important thing at this point for everyone is to kind of just try out. I think we are seeing great feedback on the social media about this capability. We're looking forward to hearing from you once you try out the examples and all, and see how you can utilize it in your applications.
Cool. Then I think there is so much topic in this space. We probably can do 2-3 more Ask Toms on different aspects of this. Let's see. This was like the first introduction in Ask Tom, I guess.
So there was just probably one last question coming up. I know that we're up to the hour.
Yeah.
About need to have some complex validation rules in order to insert into his relational tables. Whether there's whether duality views can help in that scenario to send a JSON back.
That's something. Yeah. Go ahead.
I guess take that. So thanks Nitu for the question. We are looking into a framework that allows you to associate validation rules with the duality view. So you'll be able to do cross-field validation, and these fields could come from obviously different tables underneath. But you could either associate procedural logic or you could associate declarative logic with the duality views. It's not in the 23c3, but it's something that we are looking into.
Yeah, and if you want to share or if people want to share requirements, that's also an excellent time to do that on the forums that Ranjan mentioned. Okay, then thanks a lot, everyone, and looking forward to hearing back from you. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.